The slap stung my cheek like a betrayal forged in fire. But it was nothing compared to the gut punch of learning my mother-in-law, Evelyn, had sold the house my grandmother left me. My knees buckled as I stood in her pristine living room. The deed to my childhood humane last tied to Gran now in the hands of strangers. Her smug grin, framed by perfectly styled silver hair, told me she felt no remorse, only triumph. I'd always known Evelyn disliked me. From the moment I married her son, Michael, she'd made it clear I wasn't good enough, too common, too tethered to my small-town roots. The house, a quaint two-story cottage filled with Gran's quilts and faded photos, was my sanctuary, my proof that I came from something sturdy and real. When Gran passed 2 years ago, leaving it to me, Evelyn's disdain sharpened. "You don't deserve that place," she'd sneered once, her voice dripping with venom. I never imagined she'd go this far. That morning, I'd driven to her sprawling estate to confront her about rumors I'd heard, whispers that she'd been meddling with Gran's property. Michael, ever the peacemaker, had begged me not to go. "Mom's just intense," he'd said, his hazel eyes pleading. But I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. When I arrived, Evelyn was waiting, her arms crossed, a manila envelope in hand. "It's done," she said, tossing it onto the coffee table. "The house is sold. You'll thank me later." I tore open the envelope, my hands trembling. Inside were legal documents, stamped and signed, transferring my inheritance to a developer for a fraction of its worth. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice breaking. That's when her hand flew, striking my cheek with a force that echoed her contempt. "You're ungrateful," she spat. "That shack was an eyesore, a reminder of your pathetic roots." I stumbled back, clutching my face, the world blurring through tears. Michael, who just walked in, froze in the doorway. "Mom, what the hell?" he shouted, rushing to my side. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She needed to learn her place, she said coldly. I grabbed the envelope and ran, my heart pounding with rage and grief. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing: Evelyn had underestimated me. Driving home, the weight of her betrayal settled into my bones. That house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was Gran's laughter, her stories of surviving the Great Depression, her warm hugs. I'd planned to raise my future children there, to keep her memory alive. Now, it was gone, and I'd been humiliated in the process. But as the miles passed, a spark of defiance ignited. Evelyn thought she'd won, but I wasn't the type to stay down. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my tears had dried, replaced by a steely resolve. Michael caught up with me, his face pale. "Clara, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with guilt. I didn't know she'd go this far. I looked at him, searching for the man I'd married, the one who'd promised to stand by me. "She didn't just sell my house, Michael," I said. "She stole my past, and I'm not letting her get away with it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope spread out before me, its contents a map of Evelyn's treachery. The sale was rushed, the price suspiciously low. Something didn't add up. I started digging, pulling up public records on my laptop. The buyer was a shell company, and the notary's name looked familiar, too familiar. It was Evelyn's old friend, a lawyer with a shady reputation. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just a power play. It was a scheme. I called my best friend, Lena, a paralegal with a knack for uncovering dirt. "I need your help," I told her, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Evelyn's crossed a line, and I'm going to make her regret it." Lena didn't hesitate. "Send me everything," she said. "We'll find the cracks in her plan." By dawn, we'd uncovered the first clue: the sale violated state laws on inherited property transfers. Evelyn had forged my signature. The discovery hit like a thunderbolt. I could fight this legally, fiercely, but I needed more than documents. I needed to understand why Evelyn hated me enough to destroy my legacy. Michael, torn between his mother and me, admitted she'd always seen me as a threat to her control over him. "She thinks you're pulling me away from the family," he said, his voice heavy. "But I'm with you, Clara. Whatever it takes." I nodded, but my focus was on Evelyn. She'd slapped me, humiliated me, and stolen what was mine. Tomorrow, I'd start building my case. She thought she'd broken me, but she was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest, the kind that burns away doubt and leaves only purpose. Evelyn's smug face haunted me, but so did Gran's voice, urging me to fight. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for every memory she'd tried to erase. Lena arrived at my apartment with coffee and a stack of legal books. "We've got something," she said, her eyes gleaming. She'd found a precedent, a case where a forged property transfer was overturned, with punitive damages. "If we can prove Evelyn forged your signature," she said, "we can sue her for fraud and emotional distress." The words emotional distress hit hard. That slap wasn't just physical. It was a wound to my soul. We spent hours combing through the documents. The notary, Margaret Klein, had a history of bending rules for Evelyn's social circle. Lena found a public record of Margaret's license being suspended years ago for irregularities. It was a thread, but we needed more. I called the developer who'd bought the house, posing as a curious neighbor. The man on the phone was cagey, admitting the deal was unusually fast and pushed by a woman with connections. Evelyn's fingerprints were everywhere. Michael hovered nearby, his guilt palpable. "I should have stopped her sooner," he said, running a hand through his dark hair. I wanted to comfort him, but my anger at Evelyn spilled over. "Why didn't you?" I asked, sharper than I meant. He flinched. "She's my mom, Clara. I thought she'd never go this far." His voice cracked, and I saw the boy caught between two women he loved. I softened. "Help me now," I said. "That's what matters." He nodded, pulling out his phone. "She keeps records in her home office. I can get in there." It was risky. Evelyn would never let him snoop, but Michael's resolve surprised me. "I'm done letting her control us," he said. That afternoon, he drove to her house, using a family lunch as an excuse. While Evelyn was distracted, he slipped into her office and photographed her files. He texted me a blurry image of a ledger with my house's address and a payment to Margaret Klein. My heart raced. This was proof tangible, damning proof. But it wasn't enough to just expose her. I wanted Evelyn to feel the weight of what she'd done, to face consequences that would shake her perfect world. Lena suggested we hire a lawyer, someone outside Evelyn's influence. We found Rachel Torres, a no-nonsense attorney who'd taken down corrupt officials. "This is personal for you," Rachel said after hearing my story. "But we'll make it legal. She'll pay." Rachel outlined our plan: file a lawsuit for fraud, forgery, and emotional distress, and request an injunction to halt the property's development. If we won, the sale could be reversed, and Evelyn could face financial penalties. The thought of her losing her precious status made my blood sing. But Rachel warned me, "Evelyn's connected. She'll fight dirty." I didn't care. I'd been slapped, betrayed, and stripped of my legacy. Dirty was fine by me. That evening, Michael and I sat down to talk. He was still shaken from sneaking into his mother's office. "There's more," he said quietly. "She's been funneling money from her charity into personal accounts." I saw the records. My jaw dropped. Evelyn, the pillar of high society, was a crook. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about dismantling her empire of lies. I called Rachel with the new information. "If we can link the house sale to her broader schemes," she said, "we can bury her." But we needed solid evidence, not just photos. Lena suggested we dig into Evelyn's charity, a foundation for underprivileged youth that smelled like a front. Public records showed inflated expenses and questionable donations. The deeper we went, the uglier it got. By the end of the day, I felt like a warrior sharpening her sword. Evelyn had struck first, but I was ready to strike back. Tomorrow, we'd meet with Rachel to file the lawsuit. I looked at Michael, who'd chosen me over his mother, and felt a flicker of hope. We were a team now, and Evelyn was about to face a storm she couldn't control. Filing the lawsuit felt like lighting a fuse. Rachel's office was a flurry of activity papers flying, phones ringing, her sharp voice cutting through the chaos. "We're not just going after the house," she said, her dark eyes locked on mine. "We're exposing Evelyn's entire operation." I nodded, my heart pounding with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The complaint we filed was a beast: fraud, forgery, breach of fiduciary duty, and a claim for emotional distress that detailed the slap in vivid detail. Rachel had included a demand for punitive damages, arguing Evelyn's actions were willful and malicious. Reading those words felt like reclaiming my power. But the injunction was our immediate goal to stop the developer from tearing down Grant's house. Every day counted. Evelyn's response was swift and venomous. Her lawyer, a slick man named Gerald Hayes, called Rachel to offer a settlement, $50,000 to drop the case. "She thinks you're bluffing," Rachel told me, her tone dry. "She's wrong." I refused the money. It wasn't about cash. It was about justice. Gerald's next move was a smear campaign. Anonymous tips to local blogs painted me as a gold digger who'd tricked Michael into marriage. Evelyn's friends whispered at country clubs, calling me unstable. The lies stung, but they only fueled my fire. Lena's research into Evelyn's charity uncovered a gold mine. The foundation had received millions in donations, but barely any went to actual programs. Instead, funds flowed to offshore accounts and shell companies, including the one that bought my house. "She's been laundering money," Lena said, her voice hushed with disbelief. We handed the evidence to Rachel, who looped in a forensic accountant. The accountant confirmed it. Evelyn was running a Ponzi-like scheme, using new donations to pay off old ones while pocketing the rest. Michael was devastated. "She's my mother," he said, his voice breaking. "How could she do this?" I held his hand, my own anger softening. He'd lost something to a belief in the woman who'd raised him. But he didn't waver. He gave Rachel access to more of Evelyn's files, including emails where she bragged about handling my inheritance. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall we were building against her. The injunction hearing was set for the next week. Rachel prepped me relentlessly, warning that Evelyn's team would try to discredit me. "They'll bring up your background, your family's lack of wealth," she said. "Don't let them rattle you." I practiced my testimony, recounting the slap, the sale, the betrayal. Each time, I felt Grant's strength in me, her voice whispering, "Stand tall, Clara." The night before the hearing, I visited the house, or what was left of it. The developer had started clearing the land, but the structure still stood, its windows dark. I pressed my hand against the weathered door, remembering Grant's smile. Tears fell, but they weren't weak. They were fuel. I whispered a promise: "I'll get you back." At the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Evelyn sat across from me, her face a mask of composure, but her eyes betrayed panic. Gerald argued the sale was legal, claiming I'd agreed to it verbally. Rachel dismantled him, presenting the forged signature and the shady notary's history. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, granted the injunction. The house was safe for now. I exhaled, relief flooding me. Michael squeezed my hand, his eyes shining with pride. But Evelyn's glare cut through the crowd, promising war. I met her gaze, unflinching. She'd tried to break me, but I was stronger than she'd ever imagined. As we left the courtroom, Rachel whispered, "This is just the beginning. She's going down." That night, I dreamed of Gran, her hands cupping my face. "You're doing it," she said. I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Evelyn's empire was crumbling, and I was the one holding the sledgehammer. Tomorrow, we'd push harder, digging into her charity's finances. She'd face a brutal shock, soon one she'd never see coming. The courtroom victory was sweet, but it was only the first battle. Evelyn's charity was the key to unraveling her, and I threw myself into the fight like a woman possessed. Lena, Rachel, and I formed a war room in my dining room, papers and laptops covering every surface. We were detectives now, piecing together a puzzle that could destroy Evelyn's legacy. The forensic accountant, a quiet man named Tom, uncovered a trail of transactions linking Evelyn's charity to the shell company that bought my house. She used charity funds to finance the purchase, he said, pointing to a spreadsheet. That's embezzlement. The word sent a shiver down my spine. Evelyn wasn't just cruel. She was a criminal. We needed to prove it beyond doubt. Michael was our secret weapon. He remembered passwords to Evelyn's old email accounts, ones she thought were secure. Late one night, he logged in and found a thread between Evelyn and Margaret Klein, discussing creative accounting for the house sale. "This is it," I whispered, my heart racing. The emails showed Evelyn instructing Margaret to backdate documents and hide payments. It was a smoking gun. Rachel filed a motion to expand the lawsuit, adding charges of embezzlement and racketeering. This could trigger a criminal investigation, she warned. "Are you ready for that?" I looked at Michael, who nodded grimly. "She brought this on herself," he said. I felt a pang for him was losing his mother in a way I'd never expected, but my resolve didn't waver. Evelyn had to face the consequences. The backlash came fast. Evelyn's lawyer, Gerald, filed a countersuit, accusing me of defamation and emotional manipulation of Michael. It was laughable, but it hurt to see my name dragged through the mud. Social media buzzed with lies, some claiming I'd faked the slap for sympathy. Evelyn's friends were relentless, painting her as a saint under attack. But I had truth on my side, and truth was sharper than their gossip. Lena suggested we go public. "People need to know who she really is," she said. I hesitated. Exposing Evelyn meant exposing Michael's family, but he agreed. "Let's do it," he said. "I'm tired of her lies." We contacted a local journalist, Sarah, who'd written exposés on corrupt charities. She was skeptical at first, but the evidence, emails, ledgers, bank records convinced her. "This is huge," she said. "Evelyn's finished if this gets out." Sarah's article dropped 2 days later, a front-page story titled "Charity Queen or Con Artist." It detailed Evelyn's schemes, including the house sale, with quotes from anonymous sources, us. The town exploded. Donors demanded audits, and the charity's board launched an internal investigation. Evelyn's perfect facade cracked, and I could almost hear her panic from across town. But she wasn't done fighting. She called Michael, begging him to fix this. "You're my son," she sobbed over the phone, loud enough for me to hear. "Don't let her destroy me." Michael's face hardened. "You destroyed yourself, Mom," he said, hanging up. I'd never loved him more than in that moment. The next step was a deposition. Evelyn would have to testify under oath, and Rachel was ready to tear her apart. We prepped for days, practicing questions that would trap her in her lies. "She'll try to charm her way out," Rachel warned. "Don't let her." I wouldn't. I'd seen Evelyn's true face, and I was ready to show the world. The night before the deposition, I walked through Gran's house in my mind, room by room. The creaky stairs, the kitchen where she'd taught me to bake. Evelyn thought she could erase that, but she'd only made me stronger. Tomorrow, she'd face the consequences of her actions. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore, I was fighting for Gran, for Michael, for every person she'd manipulated. And I wasn't backing down. The deposition room was cold, sterile. The kind of place where truths are stripped bare. Evelyn sat across from me, her designer suit impeccable, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. I held her gaze, my heart steady, Gran's memory anchoring me. Rachel started with soft questions, lulling Evelyn into a false sense of security. "Can you confirm your role in the charity?" she asked. Evelyn smiled, her voice smooth as silk. "I've dedicated years to helping children," she said, playing the saint. But Rachel was a predator, and she'd spotted her prey. She slid the forged deed across the table. "Then explain this." Evelyn's smile faltered. She stammered, claiming she'd acted in my best interest. Rachel pounced, presenting the emails with Margaret Klein. "Did you instruct M.S. Klein to forge Clara's signature?" she asked. Evelyn's lawyer objected, but the question hung in the air. Evelyn's eyes darted to Michael, who sat stone-faced beside me. I don't recall," she said weakly. The room felt electric. Rachel pressed harder, unveiling the charity's financial records. "Can you explain why $200,000 in donations went to a shell company that purchased Clara's house?" Evelyn's face paled. She mumbled about clerical errors, but the stenographer's tapping keys felt like a countdown to her doom. By the end, she was sweating, her composure shattered. Outside, Michael hugged me tightly. "You did it," he whispered. But it wasn't over. The deposition was just the spark. The fire was coming. Sarah's article had already prompted a state investigation into the charity. Donors were pulling out, and Evelyn's social circle was shrinking. She was unraveling, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and pity. The next day, Rachel called with news. The district attorney was reviewing our evidence for criminal charges. Embezzlement, fraud, maybe even racketeering, she said. Evelyn could face prison. The word prison hit like a thunderclap. I'd wanted justice, but the reality of Evelyn behind bars was heavier than I'd expected. Michael was quiet, his grief raw. "She's still my mom," he said, his voice barely audible. I held him, knowing this victory came at a cost. We kept digging, uncovering more of Evelyn's schemes. The charities board, desperate to save face, cooperated with the DA, handing over internal records. One document showed Evelyn had siphoned funds to renovate her own home. The hypocrisy was staggering. She called my house a shack while using stolen money to gild her mansion. The community's reaction was swift. Protests formed outside Evelyn's estate, former allies distancing themselves. I saw her at a grocery store once, her face haggard, no one meeting her eyes. Part of me wanted to gloat, but Gran's voice echoed, "Don't become what you hate." I walked away, focusing on the fight ahead. The trial date was set. Rachel warned it would be brutal. Evelyn's team would paint me as a vengeful daughter-in-law. But we had evidence, witnesses, and the truth. Lena found a former charity employee willing to testify about Evelyn's pressure to falsify records. Michael agreed to take the stand, ready to expose his mother's lies. I was terrified but resolute. The night before the trial, I sat with Gran's old quilt, tracing its stitches. Each one felt like a promise kept. Evelyn had tried to break me, but she'd only forged me into something stronger. Tomorrow, I'd face her in court, not as a victim, but as a warrior. She'd learn what happens when you underestimate someone like me. The courtroom was a battlefield, every seat filled with whispers and judgment. I wore a navy blazer, my hair pulled back, channeling Gran's quiet strength. Evelyn sat at the defense table, her face a mask of defiance, but her eyes flickered with fear. Today, she'd face the truth. Rachel opened with a devastating narrative, painting Evelyn as a predator who'd exploited her status to steal from me and countless others. She showed the jury the forged deed, the emails, the charity's cooked books. "This isn't just about a house," she said. "It's about a woman who abused her power to destroy a family's legacy." The jury leaned forward. Gripped. Evelyn's lawyer, Gerald, tried to spin a story of a misunderstanding, claiming I'd exaggerated the slap and consented to the sale. But Rachel called me to the stand. I recounted the moment Evelyn struck me, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. She sold my grandmother's house, I said, knowing it was all I had left of her. A juror wiped her eyes. Michael's testimony was the turning point. He spoke of his mother's manipulation, her obsession with control. She thought she could erase Clara's past, he said, his voice breaking. But she erased her own integrity. Evelyn stared at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. The jury saw her for what she was, a liar, not a saint. The former charity employee, a nervous woman named Karen, testified about Evelyn's threats to fire anyone who questioned her finances. The forensic accountant detailed the money trail, linking the house sale to Evelyn's personal accounts. Each witness was a nail in her coffin. Gerald's objections grew frantic, but the evidence was overwhelming. During a recess, Evelyn approached me in the hallway, her voice low. "You're tearing my family apart," she hissed. I looked into her eyes, seeing not the monster I'd built up, but a desperate woman clinging to her crumbling empire. "You did that yourself," I said, walking away. Gran's voice echoed, "Stay kind, but stay firm." The trial stretched over days, each one peeling back more of Evelyn's lies. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning. The foreperson read the verdict: guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Evelyn's face crumpled, her hands gripping the table. The judge ordered the house sale reversed and awarded me damages, including punitive ones for emotional distress. As Evelyn was led away, she looked at Michael, tears streaming down her face. He turned away, his hand finding mine. I felt no joy, only a heavy relief. The house was mine again, but the cost was a fractured family. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I focused on Michael. "We did it," I whispered. He nodded, his eyes wet. "For you. For Gran." That night, I walked through the house, now legally mine again. The developer had left it untouched, thanks to the injunction. I ran my fingers along the walls, feeling Gran's presence. But the victory was bittersweet. Evelyn faced prison, and Michael carried the weight of her betrayal. I vowed to rebuild not just the house, but our family, stronger than before. The house stood quiet under the morning sun, its chipped paint and sagging porch a testament to survival. I stood in the kitchen, Gran's old teapot in my hands, feeling her love in its worn handle. The fight was over, but the healing was just beginning. Evelyn's sentencing came a week later. She got 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. Her charity dissolved, her reputation in ashes. The courtroom was half empty. Her former allies had vanished. Michael didn't attend, unable to watch his mother's fall. I went, needing to see it through. As Evelyn was led away in handcuffs, she looked at me, her eyes hollow. I felt no triumph, only closure. The damages covered repairs for the house, but money couldn't fix what was broken in Michael. He was quieter now, wrestling with guilt and loss. "I should have seen her for what she was," he said one night, staring at the stars. I took his hand. "You stood up when it mattered," I said. "That's enough." We were rebuilding. Slowly, our love tested but enduring. I hired a contractor to restore the house, keeping Gran's spirit in every choice: new paint in her favorite blue, a garden where she'd grown roses. Lena helped, her laughter filling the empty rooms. "You're bringing it back to life," she said, hammering a nail into the porch. I smiled, feeling Gran's approval. The community rallied around us. Neighbors who'd read Sarah's article brought casseroles, shared stories of Gran's kindness. One woman, an old friend of Gran's, gave me a box of her letters, filled with wisdom and love. Reading them, I cried, knowing I'd honored her memory by fighting back. Michael and I started therapy, untangling the pain Evelyn had caused. He opened up about her control, how she'd shaped his life with guilt and expectation. I shared my fear of losing Grant's legacy, my anger at being humiliated. We grew closer, our wounds knitting together. One day, we found a photo in the attic, Grant and me, laughing in the garden. Michael framed it, hanging it in the living room. "This is home," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, tears falling. The house wasn't just mine. It was ours, a symbol of what we'd overcome. Months later, we held a housewarming party. Friends filled the rooms, their voices echoing where silence had reigned. Lena raised a glass, toasting to Clara, who fought like hell. I laughed, my heart full. The house was alive again, and so was I. Evelyn wrote to Michael from prison, a letter full of apologies. He didn't respond. Not yet. "Maybe one day," he said, folding it away. I respected his pace, knowing forgiveness was his journey, not mine. For me, the fight was done. I'd reclaimed my past, my dignity, my home. Standing on the porch that night, I looked at the stars, feeling Grant's presence. "We did it," I whispered. The wind carried my words, and I knew she heard. The house, the love, the strength, it was all mine again. And no one, not even Evelyn, could take that away.